Hey guys, so I wanted to go through some of our lessons between now and when you guys take your exam, just so you can check off your work, see what you're doing in comparison to me, and I can explain some stuff in case you've got some questions, and you can use this as a perfect review, okay? So I don't really have time to go through everyone's pages bit by bit, question by question. So you've got to kind of help me out with this and make sure, because remember, it's your responsibility to make sure you're ready for the test. And so that's going to be your number one priority. Okay. So we've got one more lesson. We've got lesson 10, and then we're going to take a test. So I want to go over each of these guys with you, see if I can maybe answer some questions or clear some stuff up for those of you who are confused. Okay. All right, so lesson 5 we did even before spring break. Okay, so this was our first lesson. Some of us, if you're a Blue Day kid, you got the Chargaff's rules, like we did this in class. But if you're a Gold Day kid, we did not, because that ended up being a Green Day. Okay, all right, so what are Chargaff's rules? So before anybody really knew the structure of DNA, Erwin Chargaff at Columbia University had for a long time measured the base composition of nucleic acids like DNA. The curious feature of his data, which we now know as Chargaff's rules, was the pattern that emerged regardless of the organism species. Chargaff wrote, DNA is in its composition characteristic of the species from which it is derived. This can be demonstrated by determining the ratios in which the individual purines and pyrimidines occur. There appear to exist two main groups of DNA, namely the AT type, in which adenine and thymine predominate, and the GC type, in which guanine and cytosine are the major constituents. Okay, so we know this rule. We know A bonds with T, apples in a tree. We know this rule, G bonds with C, cars in the garage. Okay, so let's look at the pattern. All right, so first, what is the visual difference between purines and pyrimidines? So it looks like purines, these guys have two different shapes. We've got a pentagon and a hexagon. And then the pyrimidines, they just have one shape, one hexagon. Okay. Which DNA bases are purines and which DNA bases are pyrimidines? So just like before, in our picture, we see that adenine, guanine are purines, cytosine and thymine are pyrimidines. Why isn't there a U here? That's a great question, and that's because it's all DNA. Remember, U's are associated with RNA, and so since we're not looking at RNA today, we're not going to have any U's. All right, next question. What are the rules that we know about these base pairings? What letters go with which? Are purines bonded to purines? Purines bonded to pyrimidines, or are pyrimidines bonded to pyrimidines? Now, we know that apples are in the tree, so apples in a tree. And we know that cars are in the garage. Okay, so it looks like both times we have one purine and one pyrimidine. So what I wrote was purines always bond to pyrimidines. Okay, so A goes with T every time. G goes with C every time, unless there's a mutation. All right, then we are going to graph this data. Okay, graph this data on this little graph table below. I did the first one for you, and it actually kind of makes it easy because if you look at this, we've got similar numbers when we go across. Boom, boom, boom. And on my little bar graph here, it's going to be really hard to tell the difference between 17.7 and 17.3. So what I did is I just graphed them both together like this. Okay, so A and T's go together, C's and G's go together. Okay. All right, what did you notice when you compared the species to one another? I noticed that some species have similar percentages to each other and to humans. So we can look up at our chart, and you can write anything for this question, but if I look at 30.1, that's really similar to chickens. Okay, and it's really similar to grasshoppers. And it's really similar to yeast. Okay, so you could pick any organisms around here and kind of determine what you notice. Okay, or you can talk about how these A's and T's are similar and G's and C's are similar. What do all species have in common? I said all species have the same base pairing rules, so they have about equal numbers of A's and T's and C's and G's. So you're going to see this pattern. Now, sometimes it might be flipped. Maybe there are more C's and G's and less A's and T's depending upon the species, but in general, you're going to see the same pattern over and over and over and over again. What differences do you see from one species to another? And I wrote that they all have different percentages of pairs. Okay, so there's almost none of them that have any sort of similar, right? Oh, maybe this one's pretty similar, but still, there's still a big difference. Okay. All right, and last question says, how do you think this data helps give us clues as to how DNA is structured? And I wrote, this data shows that in all types of species, there are equal numbers of A and T and C and G, so they must be in pairs. Okay, so remember, back before the invention of a microscope, we didn't know about all of these tiny molecules like DNA, and we had to make guesses. So we know that, let's say we have A, T, G, C, T. Okay, on one side. Okay, that's our one strand. And then on the other side, we've got T, A, C, G, A. Okay, and these two are bonded. Okay, so we just have 5. So we have 1, 2, 3 A's. We have 1, 2, 3 T's. We have 1, 2 G's, and we have 2 C's. So this tells me that these two are paired and these two are paired. So it's kind of cool how you can kind of deduce, or you can kind of guess based on what numbers you have, how many of all the rest. Like I could just tell you this number and you could find all the rest. And we're going to practice that on our next paper. All right, so next, how does DNA replicate? Now, we were supposed to do this on paper, but since we can't, I had a really interesting and difficult time actually figuring out how to put these little flashcards on here. So we'll get to that in just a little bit. Okay. All right, so living organisms are complex systems. Hundreds of thousands of proteins exist inside each one of us to help carry out our daily functions. An enormous amount of information is required to manage this complex system correctly. This information, detailing the specific structure of the proteins inside of our bodies, is stored in a set of molecules called nucleic acids. Nucleic acids are DNA and RNA. The NA in DNA and RNA, that stands for nucleic acid. Okay, nucleic acids, let me grab my fancy dancy highlighter. Nucleic acids are very large molecules that have 2 main parts. The backbone of the nucleic acid is made of alternating sugar and phosphate molecules bonded together in a long chain. Each of the sugar groups in this backbone is attached to a third type of molecule called a nucleotide base. On the diagram, color the phosphate groups yellow and the deoxyribose sugar blue. So I didn't color them in here because it was going to take me forever, but I colored them in here for your guys' reference. So the phosphates are yellow and the deoxyriboses are blue. And remember, anything that ends in ose is a sugar. And then I drew the connection. So I connected the phosphate and the sugar so that you could see how the backbone is formed. Okay. All right. So though only 4 different nucleotide bases can occur in a nucleic acid, each nucleic acid contains millions of bases bonded to it. The order in which these nucleotide bases are arranged is the coding for the information it carries. The sequences of nitrogenous bases that code for a protein is called a gene. In other words, the nucleotide bases serve as a sort of genetic alphabet on which the structure of each protein in our bodies is encoded. So these are the letters. Okay, anytime you see the word base, nucleotide or nitrogenous bases, those are the letters. Okay. All right, DNA gets its name from the sugar molecule in its backbone, deoxyribose. However, it gets its significance from its unique structure. 4 nucleotide bases occur in DNA: adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine, and always pair with the same partner. Period. On the diagram, color the adenine green, thymine orange, cytosine pink, and guanine brown. So again, I colored them on here, and then over here I just added their letters. All right, so before we jump into our lab, first question, what is the monomer of nucleic acids called? Remember, mono means one, so what's a single unit of DNA called? And that's a nucleotide base. Okay. All right, then it says which nitrogenous bases are purines and which are pyrimidines. If you don't remember from before, you can go back to Chargaff's rules and you can look at this picture. We know A and G are purines and C and T are pyrimidines. Okay, then we're going to look, and it says DNA is double-stranded based on what we remember from Chargaff's rules. If you know the sequence of one DNA strand, what is the complementary strand? Okay, so the complementary is a fancy word for opposite. Okay, so when you see the word complementary, you need to think of opposite DNA. A lot of times when I was looking at this question on people's work, they put U's down here. Okay, and remember, if we're looking at DNA, then there is no U's. Okay, so if that's a mistake that you made, that's okay, but go ahead and fix it now, okay? All right, assume 100 base pair DNA double helix has 45 cytosines. How many adenines are there? Okay, so I'm sure you're thinking, Michelle, this looks like you have 45 and 45 and 55 and 55. This is 200. And the answer is yes, I know, and that's because, remember, we have two sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So let's say we have one side of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And another side of 10, which makes it 20 total, but only 10 on each side. Okay, so we know that these two have to be equal, and these two have to be equal, and altogether we can add up to 100 on each side. Okay, now let's do the lab. So what you're going to do is you're going to simulate DNA replication. So you're going to make a copy of a DNA strand. Okay, that's what replication means, is making a copy. All right, so I got to start it over here. You want to click and drag them. So you're just going to click until it has the outline border, and then you're going to drag it wherever you want. Okay, now you can't really tell in here, like if we were doing this on paper, I could overlap these guys and so that you could see the bond, but since we're not doing it on paper, it's hard to do. So just if you want to leave some space and have an imaginary bond right here, that would be fine. Okay, so I kind of got you guys started. I think I did like 2. And so what you want to know is that the original yellows, they're going to split. And then the blues are going to fill in the gaps. And then eventually, once it's done filling all the way, you're going to have 2 identical strands at the end. Okay, so, oh Lord, mess this one up. This should not be the same. That would be a mutation. All right, that's the one that belongs, okay? And you can check yourself by kind of looking and bonding. Bond, 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 bond. Does it work? Bonding, yep, totally bonding, okay? And then as this starts to open up, more blue ones will be able to fill in, okay? And so this is the kind of part that kind of is tedious, and I'm sorry about that. Obviously on paper it would have been much easier. Okay, so then what you're going to do is you're going to take a look and you're going to write down what's going on in each strand. Okay, so these outside ones, these are going to be your yellows. And your inside ones are going to be blue. Okay, now the way that you know that you did it right is if this strand over here and this strand over here